All right, welcome to Branson Spotlight. This week, interviewing, let me see what it says here, Female Entertainer of the Year, Janice Martin.
Janice
Hello.
Martin, hi.
Janice Martin, who works at the Showboat Branson Bell.
Along with Christopher James.
Oh, I do. How about that? So, what's it been, 4 years?
It's almost
4 years that you've been on the Showboat, but you started at Silver Dollar City, yeah?
Well, I came for the International Fest for 5 weeks, and I did that in 2010.
Whoa,
So
where did you come internationally from?
from New York City, which is a country unto itself.
It's a world unto itself, yes. But you came to the festival, I guess, 5 years ago, and did the international festival over at Silver Dollar City in the show
Fiery Fiddles.
Fiery Fiddles. So you lit your fiddle aflame.
Every day.
Every day.
It was very expensive to buy all those violins.
Yes. It's just like when I test smoke detectors. They say you should test them every year. It's cost me 7 houses. So Fiery Fiddles, so you did that, the festival was just a few months, right?
It's 5 weeks.
Oh, 5 weeks. So that's, over a month.
1.25 months.
If you're going to get picky about it.
Right.
So you did the festival, and did you have any idea that they were going to ask you to be at the Showboat when you were doing the
I
festival?
had no idea.
So how'd that all come about?
In fact, the day that they all went to the Showboat, I didn't go because I had some other things going on. So it was completely outside my realm.
So when the cast was going to the Showboat of the
Yeah,
Fiery Fiddles.
of Fiery Fiddles, yeah.
So they all go. They tell you how great Christopher James is at the Showboat.
I think they didn't go to, no. Yes, they did.
But they come back, and so you had no idea. You didn't know much about the Showboat or anything when
Not
they
at
hired
all.
you?
Not at all.
So they get a hold of you, being Silver Dollar City, I'm guessing, and ask you to come and get on the Showboat.
What I like to do, yeah.
So you do the aerial violin thing, I'm told. I'm told that you do this aerial violin show.
He's never seen it.
I've never paid attention. I have other things to do.
Oh, ouch.
I'm sorry. It's just that I have anything else to do.
Right. Just like I've never seen your act either.
That's fine. That's for the best. So you...
Believe me,
So you do the aerial act on the Showboat, and everyone always asks you these questions. I know because I happen to hear them, so let's just go over them. So how did you learn to do the aerial act?
Well, I went to aerial school in New York City,
where
I learned how to fly on a trapeze first, and then I worked with a hoop called a lyra, and then I graduated to the silks.
I see.
Aerial silks. They're called silks, but they're not made of silks. Go figure. But they're just fabric that hangs from the sky, and they're very strong, and they don't bend too much. And
they give a little bit, though.
A little bit.
Just, yeah. So you can really grip them and stuff. And anyways, so people always ask you where you learned that, and have you ever fallen?
Truth be told, I actually did break my finger, and it was not that much before I had to do a big. I'm a multi-talent, so I do symphony pop shows as well, and I was playing Rhapsody in Blue with an orchestra.
Symphony pop shows.
And is
those
that on my resume?
Are those sponsored by Coke or Pepsi? Which pop?
Mountain Dew.
That would fit around
So,
here. Yes.
absolutely. So, I did actually fall when I was learning a new move, and I broke my finger. But other than that, I've never fallen.
Yeah, because that would be serious. But
I probably wouldn't be here.
No, and I've heard all of these answers before. It's just that people always ask these same questions, and so we try to cover all those. But so you learned in a circus school, started on the trapeze, which is quite a bit different, I would think.
Well, believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, when you're first starting, you are, and I did a lot of gymnastics and dance as a youngster, but when you're it's a lot about just gaining the right strength and getting the right coordination. And so it's arm and ab strength probably the most.
With trapeze?
With probably any aerial act, because you're pulling yourself up most of the time and finding finding your balance, and your core is involved in all of that activity. So it was all about my core.
Okay. And would you care to show that core right now? Well, we'll save that for the extras. So they always want to know where you learned everything. They want to know, in the show you mentioned that you went to Fort Leonard Wood, and everyone thinks they're witty when they say Fort.
Lost in the woods in the state of misery.
And you have to act like that's a new joke every single day. So you went to Juilliard right out of high school? or right out of college?
No, I went to Indiana University right out of high school.
What was your major?
I majored in violin performance.
Okay.
I got my
That makes
bachelor's, and then I got an artist diploma, which is a separate. It's sort of it's for a lot of Europeans do it because you do a lot of recitals, and it's mostly about playing rather than taking courses. But then after that, I didn't quite know what to do, so I thought, well, I might as well go to Juilliard because it's a good
Might as
name,
well.
and went to Juilliard for my master's.
What was the application process for that?
Well, you basically do an audition. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And depending on your audition, you either are in or out.
Really?
But they don't really care about your grades as
No,
much.
I wouldn't think so either. But pretty nerve-wracking probably going in. And are you auditioning? Is it like a big auditorium with like an audience, or is it in front of like when you do
It's in a big. Well, their recital hall is a fairly large auditorium, and so they have the panel from the judge, or the faculty from the school, and they're sitting there. Dorothy DeLay, she ended up being my teacher, but she was the teacher of Itzhak Perlman and some very major violinists in the symphony world today, and Glenn Dicterow, who was the concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic, and then the rest of the faculty. They have. It's actually the whole string faculty.
so it's not just one person.
No, it's
there.
about 12.
Yeah, I've gone to do auditions for television movie things, and you go into a room, this huge room, and there's like one person sitting in a chair that just stares at you, doesn't react, and it's a little nerve-wracking. It's kind of like some of our shows that we have.
When the audience is really small.
Yeah, and they just sit there and...
and look
perturbed. Those are good rehearsals. Yeah, you feel like you're keeping them from the next buffet sometimes. But so anyway, so you get into Juilliard. How long was the program?
I think I had to do. I mean, it's been a while. So probably like 4 or 5 pieces.
No, I mean the actual time that you were in Juilliard.
2 years.
2 years.
Masters.
Oh, that's not bad.
No.
So you do that, and then you went on to the Army at Fort Lost in the Woods. Hilarious every single time I hear it. So you go on there. So you go to Fort Leonard Wood. Did you know when you were in Juilliard that you were going to do that?
Yeah, actually, what happened is my second year of Juilliard, it sort of occurred to me that, I have to pay back my student loans.
You do?
So I thought, I was just starting to do some competitions, and I was doing well in them. And I knew that for me to really do well, I needed to put all my efforts into these competitions.
So you couldn't work.
But I had to not be working, and I had to also, most people start auditioning for an orchestra job because most violinists, that's what they assume that they're going to do.
Right.
And so this realization came that I had to either prepare for a job or keep going with these competitions. And I just had gotten the solo bug, I guess, and wanted to see how far I could go. Mm-hmm. So I'm a sucker for inspirational books and so forth. I've reached for the stars. Really? So I decided I'd reach my potential as much as I could and push the envelope, and so I decided to go for it. But I realized after several nights of not being able to sleep that I really better start thinking about the future and how I was going to pay back my loans and so forth. And sort of as a fluke, I sat down and wrote out what I thought would be really helpful, in terms of a job, and trying to create this in my mind. And just a few days after that, I saw this sign, student loan repayment inquire within. So I walked into the U.S. Army Recruitment Center. And up until that point, I never even contemplated the military because it was so foreign to my life. My parents are Canadians.
Right.
They're still Canadian citizens. And my friends were all, liberals, artsy, fartsy people who wanted nothing to do with the government. So it was a really interesting thing because I started really taking it seriously. I went in, asked sort of like, well, you don't happen to have violins in the Army band, do you? And or the Army? And he's like, well, let me go check.
They didn't know.
And he came back and he's like, well, not only do we have open violins, but we have a job opening. If you put in your tape next week. It was a huge coincidence. Yeah. So I kind of thought, well, maybe it was meant to be. So I sent in my tape. They brought me to the audition. I got the job, and then I had to decide what to do. Mm-hmm. So I asked for a week to think about it, and I decided to go for it.
Now, when you decided, or when you went in there, had you talked to your parents or anyone? 'Cause
No.
I'm sure they were quite shocked.
No, they were completely shocked.
And did they try to talk you out of it?
No, actually.
Really?
They just were stunned, but they've been usually pretty stunned at most things that I do. So I'm the third of their children. So
you go back to school. You're in school at this time.
I'm
of
at
course.
school. It was like October, and I had from October until June to finish up my schooling, having just joined the Army, and then knowing that like a week after I graduated, I was going to basic training.
What did your friends think at school?
Well, they thought I was pretty bizarre.
I would think
They really
so.
did. Although, in all fairness, I had a lot of Israeli friends who it's a requirement to go into the military. So, they kind of understood it as just something that you do.
Just do it.
Yeah, they had been through basic training, and they didn't think it killed them. So
Right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously not. Yeah.
But most normal people thought, "What? Where did that come from?"
Yeah, I can imagine your parents, because I joined the Navy to pay for my school, and I didn't tell anyone. I just went and joined, and I actually called my parents from the recruitment center where I was getting the physical, and they were a little upset.
They were.
Oh, yes.
What did they
were
say?
Quite upset. Just shocked that I had done it, because the Gulf War actually had just started.
Wow.
And by coincidence, because I had planned this whole thing months in advance, I went the day after the U.S. got involved in the Gulf War. Like the next day was the day I was being sworn in. And so they thought, well, you just did this because of the Gulf War. Think about it. And no, I had been planning it for several months and stuff. So it was quite a shock to everybody.
Wow. Were you shocked too?
No, actually, because I had planned to do it out of high school and put it off to go to college, and the college thing just wasn't working for me for a lot of different reasons. So I had been in college for 2 years, had debt already, and I thought, this seems like a good program, because I could go there, get my engineering degree, and it seemed like a good program at the time. But then, war. Like a lot of people that join those programs, was that ever in your mind? Like I have friends that join the National Guard and all that to pay for their school training or to help them out, and then suddenly they're getting shipped overseas,
Right.
and they're complaining about it, and the National Guard is like, what do you think we do?
Right. Well,
was that in your mind, or?
I was lucky enough to do my audition before I went, and I actually knew this guy who was a violinist who he auditioned after he joined. His recruiting officer didn't tell him quite the right order of doing things, and they rejected him, so he ended up going into infantry, and it kind of ruined his playing for a while.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I was very lucky. The whole thing was very lucky, quite frankly. And in hindsight, it certainly opened a whole new way of thinking, quite honestly. And, I really started seeing that there's always two sides to issues, and it's always good to be informed and to really embrace both sides so that you have so you can come up with your own ideas and your own honest assessment of how things
But you had to do the same basic training
Absolutely.
as everyone else.
Yep.
So, wow.
It was fun. Well, and honestly, like after spending, most of my time in a practice room with walls, and the only thing of the other people around is what you can hear from the other practice rooms, and you're all sort of in your competition of who can practice longer, and so it was kind of fun in a weird way, like to just be outside and have these activities planned for you every day, and like go into the gas chamber and throw a live hand grenade and do bivouac, and like these were things that I had no experience whatsoever doing, because my life was so segregated from the rest of people.
Right. Well, I was the total opposite. I was petrified the entire time of basic training and all that. And you said the gas chamber thing. That was my biggest fear. My friends had gone through the year before and told me about this gas chamber. And you go in and they fill it with gas. You have to come out and give your name, serial number, whatever. And both of my friends told me how horrible it was, that they had just started coughing and thought they were going to die. And so, real quick funny story is that they put me in this chamber, and I was petrified. I thought they're going to start filling it with gas. I started throwing a fit. I don't want to go in there. Can't we do this some other way? Like, I started freaking out. And the drill instructor was basically looking at me like I was an idiot, and so forces me to go in, of course, and it ends up that it wasn't the gas chamber, it was a hearing test inside. So it was very, very embarrassing, because I had thrown a fit. When I came out, he screamed at me about, what's wrong with you? You're afraid to listen to some tones? What kind of soldier are you going to be?
Well,
Very
there
embarrassing.
might be hitting your subconscious mind
Yeah,
with some
I guess
kind
so.
of.
So you finish the military, you get your schooling paid off.
Well,
You
yeah, I mean,
perform with,
when I was in the Army after basic training, I spent 3 years I was located in Washington, D.C., and so
really
I had a
interesting.
chance to perform for all kinds of dignitaries. And I mean,
Clinton.
we played
I think I saw a picture of you with Bill Clinton. Yeah.
Bill Clinton. No, it was Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. Right.
And I no, it was cool because it was like getting into playing at the Capitol and all these senators and
All the
congressmen
pomp and circumstances
and
of all
it
that.
was kind of fun, and it was also kind of being able to see inside a little bit the back door view of all of that, which was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stereotypes were confirmed, and it was in generally a really interesting experience.
Oh, that's fun.
And they were very supportive. Like I went off and did some competitions, like in Denmark and so forth, and they were really supportive of me doing solo work. I did some solo recitals, and I played concertos with their orchestra, and things above and beyond what their normal jobs were. And they, a lot of them are people who stay in it for kind of life, and
Right,
I think it
career.
was maybe refreshing to have some new ideas and coming in and doing these kind of performances.
I'm sure you made connections because there's people from all over the country.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. Actually, I ended up playing at the Supreme Court for Sandra Day O'Connor. I did a recital by her.
Was she expecting it, or
By-
she just stood up and started playing? Hits the gavel and you just stand up.
Well,
and
actually, it
start
started
playing.
because I was invited to her birthday. They were having a big, and I played at her birthday celebration,
Oh,
and
that's
then that
nice.
turned into her inviting me to come to do a recital.
Okay, so you didn't just stand up in the middle of court and start playing Orange Blossom.
Well, I would probably do something like that,
that
but
would be
not in that
hilarious.
particular case.
We should do that. They
That
would
would be
love that.
great.
Wouldn't they love to have that on YouTube?
Yeah, you can do your straitjacket.
Yes, while you're playing that.
Right.
Right in the middle
Just
of a
really fast.
court hearing. Yeah. So you get out, and what was your first big job then after the military? Then
After the military, well, I actually during that time there was a man who lent me a Stradivarius violin, and he wanted me to. I actually thought about staying, but he kind of convinced me to branch out. I did a Carnegie Hall debut.
you're getting mixed up with Sandra Day O'Connor.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I released a CD, and I got an agent, and I started doing some touring.
Oh, wow.
And I
On
was
your own,
doing
or with
recitals.
with a symphony, or
With either performing as guest soloist with a symphony or bringing a pianist and playing my own recital.
oh, that's fun.
It was fun.
And so, what kind of events would you do with just a pianist with you?
Recitals, they would be in halls. I mean, I performed, there's a lot of performing arts centers where they just want to have an event and some cultural event. And it was a little depressing because a lot of these kind of places would say, well, we give like 10 events a year, and we always lose money on the classical one, but we
Right.
feel it's important to support the arts and bring culture to our environment, which is good, but it's kind of hard to hear that, your event is making them lose money.
Right.
But so I mean, most performing arts centers, they have one or two classical performances in a year, and then plus
Well, it's good that they still keep having them, even though
I
they're
think
not
it's
making money.
important.
Yeah.
I think it's important, and I mean it's neat that they do things beyond the bottom line.
Right.
And I think it's especially if you're a classical musician, you got to be doing it for more than the bottom line, because ultimately that's kind of what led me from veering away from just doing a classical career. Because they're just I wanted to eat, and then second of all.
So picky.
Second of all, it is kind of depressing to go around hearing these same kind of stories. And, I had a European agent, and I did a lot of things, in Europe. And there's just a more built-in audience for classical music there. I mean, there's just a deeper appreciation. I performed a lot in Japan, too. I toured there for about 10 years every summer, but it's just a different kind of mentality about classical music. But I think also I was starting to get impatient with the idea of just me recreating what all these other artists were trying to recreate. And I've always loved in the rock world their mentality of just create something that's unique and that's your own and be yourself. And that whole philosophy is, I think, something really valuable. And it started to really mean something to me that I wanted to do something that was a little farther out than what was allowed basically in the classical
Do you
world.
think, hearing you say how it's popular in Japan and in Europe, but not as much in the U.S., do you think that's because now we get most of our entertainers from shows like, America's Got Talent and all that? Like, the way somebody becomes popular in music now is to go on a reality show, pretty much, here.
Well, I think classical music, its roots are in Europe, so it's part of their whole culture. So historically, I mean, they're just much more caught up in history. I mean, they have like a historical building that's been around for 500 years, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And we don't quite have that. We have a newer, younger mentality, I think, in general.
Here we
And
rip everything down and build a new one.
yeah, and I'm not going to say that Europe, rock music isn't, far more popular, because it is. It's and I'm not in any way downgrading the culture of America. I think that because Europe has their own reality shows and American Idol and that sort of thing.
They just treat them a little bit different, I think.
Well,
yeah. I mean, it's just I just think times have changed when it comes to music, entertainment in general.
Well, I
'Cause
think
that's the number one question people come out after the show and they say, one thing that they always bring up is, "Oh, you should go on America's Got Talent," or they don't understand.
or I should be in Las Vegas or something.
Yeah, they always think. But it's funny because when you're in Vegas, which I've done shows in Vegas, they always say, "Well, you should be here." Like, people just always think you should be somewhere else.
That's true.
And
Well,
it's just kind of strange.
It's interesting. I went to Berlin, and I was meeting up with the concertmaster of one of these orchestras in East Berlin. And it was very interesting to talk to him because I sort of thought I was asking a perfunctory question like, so, is life better now that the walls come down? And his response was, no, I wish it were still back up, which I was like, why? And he said, well, before it fell down, we had 28 different orchestras, and they were high level because they were supported by the government. And now that it's come down, we're competing with pornography, and competing for entertainment, and culture isn't an entertainment in that way. Mm-hmm. It's something that needs to have, and I hate to say this, but kind of an elitist people who are going to support it.
Right.
So for him, it was a bad thing, and because if you're just trying to make money, then you've got to kind of appeal to the lowest common denominator. I mean, this is what he felt. Mm-hmm. I mean, that may not be the full picture and 100% true, but it was interesting that someone would have that perspective.
That he wishes the wall was still
there.
Right,
when you would assume that everybody's so thrilled that it's...
The wall was gone, it's disrupting culture, and the neighbor's kids keep running in his yard now. Get out of my yard.
Yeah.
Their ball keeps covered in the
and
yard.
now those East Berliners see what the West Berliners have, and they're jealous.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's probably true, actually.
It's very true.
Yeah, because I remember when that all went down, that completely changed everything over there. Because I had friends that were in Berlin at the time, and yeah, definitely what you're talking about. So I just want to go through the career real quick. So you do that, you're doing the symphonies, you end up, you were on America's Got Talent, and people ask about that all the time. So you did that run thing, which I think eventually everyone in America is going to get to do. So that happens. You end up at the Showboat. You've been there for 4 years now. But some other things I just want to mention real quick, so we don't have a lot of time, is you came up with your book that you have for kids, because I know in conversations we've had, you've talked about wanting to go to the schools and inspire kids to follow their dreams and stuff. And you read a lot of inspirational books. You're always suggesting them, and I should read one. But you want to inspire the kids. And recently you went to one of the schools around here and performed. Yes?
I did at the Branson High School.
At the Branson High School. But your book that you came out with is kind of your whole story of how you...
Well, it's my story, a portion of my story. It's how I learned to fly is the title of it. And it's how I overcame my fear of heights. And I went... This was actually in basic training, and I, give a kind of a dramatic display of what that moment was, where I had to climb that rope and
Is that true?
hoist my
Did that
legs.
really happen?
That absolutely was true.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So then I decided to kind of go for it. I mean, I'm skipping a few years in there, but the truth is, I really wanted to kind of do other things, and I've been a pianist actually first. I started on piano at 4 and violin at 5, and I've always sung. I even played trumpet in high school. I was the lead trumpetist in my high school band, and I really actually enjoyed just kind of getting my hands on a lot of different instruments and being able to participate. I think that's something I've always wanted to do. It bugs me to not be able to participate in something. And I always wanted to combine somehow dance and music too. I actually came from an injury. I had tendinitis in both arms when I first went to school, so I couldn't play.
That could be a problem with playing.
So I had to kind of reinvent myself in the way that I played, the way that I used my body, because it was either that or have an operation. And so I started taking these physical therapy courses really seriously, and it led to a pretty serious commitment to like dance and different types of dance and just understanding coordination on a really detailed level,
right?
Which ultimately led me to, in my shows, wanting to combine music and movement, and that's where the aerial violin came from.
There you go. And now you get to do it 12 times a week.
Yeah.
12 times a week. That's a lot.
Well,
That's
you do it too.
Well, I do too, but I'm not climbing things. I'm just getting out of restraints.
It's, yeah. Well, it's actually only a 6-minute routine. Right. Mm-hmm. So,
but it's still a lot of work, because I was talking to somebody else from another show earlier today, and even though you've done it 12 times, let's say that week, when Saturday rolls around, you have to act like it's your first time, because as we were talking about, there's usually someone in the audience that this is their first show that they've ever seen. You know, they're coming to the showboat one time, or this is their wedding or their anniversary or something, and you have to do it like it's the very first time, no matter how tired and how sore you are.
Well, this experience at the showboat's been the most intense that way, where I have to really be so totally focused intellectually, emotionally, and physically, you know, so much. Usually you have more time off and you can collapse a little bit. And it's been very interesting, because I've learned a lot about how to kind of emotionally get myself to the place I need to be, no matter how I'm feeling. And, you know, there's nights that you just don't sleep well, and it's a little scary. Like, am I going to be okay after 4 hours of sleep?
You have to put that mask on, and you have to go out there and do the thing. Yeah. Trust me, because some days I do not feel like being funny. When I've been,
I bet.
When I've been with the twins all day, and they've been screaming all the way to work, and you have to go out and be like, hey, we're all going to have a great time. So it's a little tough.
Well, I have to admit, in all honesty and sincerity, you're inspiring to work with, because you really do take your job seriously, and it's you feed off each other. I mean, if everyone around you is really negative, it's really hard to have that kind of focus. So it's something I appreciate from you.
Oh, thanks.
Maybe not everybody's positive, but.
So we're winding up things at the showboat. Everybody wants to know what's going to be in store for 2015. And you're going to be back at the showboat next year, a little bit different next year.
I'm coming back. I'm going to do a slightly lighter schedule. Mm-hmm. I've got some things lined up in other countries. Malaysia starts actually in January.
Wow. That's fun.
And I'm getting back into my symphony pop shows a little more. I've missed doing that, and it's really not possible with 12 shows a week.
Yeah.
So I had a really wonderful opportunity performing as soloist with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and that has led to some other things. So
that's great.
So that's taking up a lot of what I'm going to be doing, and I'm developing some shows along that line, as well as, who knows, maybe someday I'll have my own. But
wouldn't that be just fun?
But so I'll be at the showboat, but just. At the noon cast, the red cast. Or they're calling it the gold cast.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And what's
because we're made of gold.
Yeah. And we're the other cast, which I'll be in, will be the platinum. Will be platinum.
No, I think
I would like to think of it as the unobtainium. It doesn't even exist. You cannot reach our level. That's funny. This is the first I'm hearing of the gold cast.
The gold cast.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. So, but you'll be back around next year. You'll be touring. And your book will continue to sell. We'll put a link to it on the video and
How
stuff.
I Learned to Fly.
How You Learned to Fly.
And A Christmas with Janice Martin. That's my DVD.
Yes.
And let's put a shameless plug in for my merchandise here.
We'll put it on there.
I've got a CD.
Gershwin. You have the Gershwin. Is that
Fascinating
a Christmas CD
Gershwin.
as well?
Not at all. It's a jazz Gershwin.
He was not into Christmas very much.
Well, he was Jewish, so probably not.
Oh,
but
okay.
You know, it's singing violin and piano with my little take on Gershwin tunes.
Mm-hmm. And you're continuing to inspire the children. So just real quick, I ask everybody, what's your fondest memory so far of working in Branson?
Oh, working with you, Christopher.
Oh, well, of course. That's the same answer I get from everyone.
I'm sure.
That is
probably
odd.
This interview itself.
Oh, yes,
I'm
sure.
I'm sure you agree.
And do you have any? Everyone wants to know what's the most embarrassing, crazy story you've had performing. Anything that you can think of, other than I have one that I just thought of for you.
Uh-oh.
The time when you had a little something extra to hold your hair up. And I think you wore it for the first time. It was like a band or something. Yeah, to make your hair into a ponytail. Yeah. And that fell off on stage, and we had to act like it wasn't there. But it was
it was like a small furry animal that fell out of my head
underneath you, like the whole time. I remember because I contemplated going out there afterwards and stomping on it or telling it to stay. That's my favorite moment. But your
well, thanks for bringing that up for all of our
it was
viewers.
Hysterical. Yes. Well, I have the YouTube video all over the place.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But your fondest memory or the craziest thing that's happened, anything unusual that you can think of?
Well, actually, you were talking the other day about how about a year ago we had this snowstorm, and we had to go and perform at the Chateau for, like, I don't know, 500 people dressed up in Western wear from like the 1800s.
Yeah, but these people were serious.
Very bizarre.
It wasn't just jeans and stuff. Like, this was a historical society.
They really took it seriously. It was the One-Shot Gun Club.
Yes,
and so they had their one-shot guns in their holsters. They really had their guns
and everything.
And that was interesting.
It was unique.
The sound system was, and there were a lot of things that we had to kind of make up for.
Well, the story to that is they had chartered the showboat, and they had all come to town, and they were all staying at the chateau, and we had that freak snowstorm.
It was terrible. Nobody could go
Horrible.
anywhere.
You couldn't go anywhere.
I couldn't drive.
Mm-mm. And so they called and they canceled our show, and we went back and forth all morning where they were trying to figure out how to make this group happy. And, they decided that you and I could go and do an impromptu show at the chateau. But they couldn't even get down my road. I had pictures on my Facebook of me carrying a straitjacket and all of my props and walking, all the way down to the bottom of this hill, which is like a half mile or something, so that they could pick me up. And then we went and picked you up, and we were putting together the show in the car, and, like, on the phone, and we got there, and it worked. I think we ended up getting a standing ovation and stuff for the show, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was actually kind of fun in a way to do something that was different from what we normally do.
Because the technician, there was one that happened to work at the hotel, had no idea what we were doing, and we just had to write notes down and when to hit play, when to activate microphones, but it worked. It was kind of a guerrilla type of show where we just went in there and did what we had to do, and the people had a great time, and they were fun. They really were.
They were fun.
Yeah, I don't know.
Once I got used to their costumes, it was fun.
It was weird. It was like the guys that dressed up in the Civil War.
Right,
stuff.
The reenactors.
It was the exact same thing. And where I grew up, we used to have those groups that would get together, reenact Civil War battles where they pretend to get shot. Mm-hmm. And my friends and I all thought they were so geeky. Like, we really did. And we would dress up in our Star Trek uniforms and go and make fun of them. Because... but that was a lot of fun. And that was almost exactly a year ago. Well,
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you at the Showboat next year. You'll be back there. And we'll put the links to Janice Martin's video right down here at the bottom there.
My website, janicemartin.com.
Yes, janicemartin.com, where you can go and buy your merchandise and all that sort of thing. But come by. You still have time to see Janice at the Showboat. She'll be there in 2015, of course. And stay in touch on her website, janicemartin.com, to follow her and join her mailing list on there. You send out a little mailer, let people know where you're going to be, an email list, that sort of thing. This is Janice Martin. I'm Christopher James. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.